Hi, this is Dr. Richard Jolliff, and I want to welcome you to this week's Leadership to Go. Very excited to be here with you today. We're going to get into some really awesome material today, talking about being tried by the fire and the challenges that all leaders face, being tried in the fire, by the fire, beside the fire. So this is going to be a great message we're going to get into. We'll get into some of it today and hopefully finish it up next week or the following week. But before we do that, let me remind you that your comments are important to me. There is a comment box right below this video. I'd love to hear from you. Questions, thoughts that you might have that could help me be more effective in what I'm doing. So if you have any comments or thoughts or ideas that you'd like to add, or just to say, hey, great job, love to hear from you. Also, there's a thumbs up there that you can click, and I'd encourage you to do that. That would be awesome. That will help us in the Google search engine. And there's you that are G Plus members. You can click on that G Plus, and that, of course, will post right to your G Plus page. So we appreciate that. Well, tried by fire, dealing with the difficulties and the challenges that we face as we strive to be the best leaders. And I know that's what you're striving to do, is to be the absolute best leader that you can be. Scott Peck, he opens up his bestseller, The Road Less Traveled, with this statement: life is difficult. Life is difficult. He continues, this is a great truth, one of the greatest truths. It is a great truth because once we truly see this truth, we can transcend it or move beyond it. Once we truly know that life is difficult, once we truly understand and accept that life can be difficult, then life is no longer difficult. Because once it has been accepted, the fact that life is difficult really doesn't matter. It doesn't matter anymore because we understand the difficulties and challenges. And I think sometimes as we get into leadership positions, especially if we're new to that leadership position, or maybe it's at a higher level of leadership than what we've operated before, we're a little surprised at how difficult things can actually get. Once you get past the initial excitement, enthusiasm stage, that it can become very challenging dealing with people, leading people, being an agent of change within an organization. All of these things can add to the difficulties and make things more complicated. You're dealing with personalities, you're dealing with philosophies or operating systems that people have, and all of that can create real challenges. And so for the leader. But I think that, like, watching a video like this can help us, because we realize that, listen, it is going to be difficult, and there are going to be challenges, and we're going to face some hardships. And I think about what the Apostle Paul, when he talked about his ministry and what he was doing, he said, I've spent many sleepless nights. I've spent a day and a night in the deep. All the things that he went through, persecution and the difficulties and the challenges and the physical wear and tear. Those are all part of being a leader, whether it's a church leader or it's being a leader of a corporation or leading your home. There are always going to be challenges when we're striving to be the best leader that we can be. Most people do not fully see this truth that life is difficult. Instead, they moan more or less incessantly, noisily, and subtly about the enormity of their problems, their burdens, and their difficulties, as if life were generally easy, as if life should be easy. They voice their belief noisily or subtly that their difficulties represent a unique kind of affliction, like almost that they're the only one that's going through this kind of challenge, and that somehow has been especially visited upon them, or else upon their families, their tribe, their class, their nation, their race, or even their species, and not upon others. I know about this moaning because I have done my share, and let me tell you, that is so true for me. Too much complaining through the years of leadership. But the reality is, it's just because I didn't realize how challenging and difficult, and in many ways that I was just not up to the difficulty I was facing. I was not prepared for what I was going to get into. Let me tell you something that I've learned. God uses the fire of hardship, persecution, and difficulty to test our character and spiritual commitments. The Bible distinguishes between temptation, which is used by Satan to lead to sin, and then that which is used by God to purify us and move us toward maturity and growth. And so remember, God has an end game in all of this, and that is to develop us and to help us with our character and to make us stronger leaders. And so that can be difficult at times as we move through that process. Let's define the word testing. Testing is an opportunity challenging you to prove your potential and maturity through experience. Let me say that again. An opportunity challenging you to prove your potential and maturity through experience. Here's the truth about testing. Testing always precedes promotion, always does. There are always difficulties before, it's always darkest before the dawn, as the old quote goes. Testing always precedes promotion. When you don't pass the test, God makes you retake the class and the final exam. If you refuse to take the final, you cannot advance. So we need to realize that these difficulties, remember testing now, I'm not talking about you being sick or being broke. I'm saying that testing is an opportunity, whatever that is, challenging you to prove your potential and maturity through experience. The goal of every Christian leader must be to pass the test. Ephesians chapter 4, verse 1 says that we must walk in a manner worthy of the calling with which we have been called. So whenever we're facing these difficulties, we have to strive to learn what it is that's going on here, and then how we can get through that difficulty. What is it going to take for us to pass this test that we're dealing with, this difficulty, this challenging opportunity that we're facing right now, that's challenging all of our potential, but listen, is going to create great maturity in our lives as we go through this experience. Self-promotion and human promotion can never replace divine promotion. They can never replace it. Listen to this out of Luke 14 and verse 11. For everyone who exalts himself will be humbled, and he who humbles himself shall be exalted. So it's so important for us to remember that as we are learning from these difficulties that we face in life, in ministry, in leadership positions, whatever that they might be, divine promotion is going to come, and it can never be replaced in our lives by people or self-promotion. Just as products aren't used until they're tested, so it is with us. That's another important key. That, listen, we have abilities within us we don't even realize, things that we need to come forth. And testing is a way that they come forth. They say about gold, the way that they remove the dross or the bad particles from gold to purify it, is they heat it up. And as they heat it up, the bad comes to what they call the dross, floats to the top, and then they scrape that out. That's true in us. There's plenty of things that that don't need to be in our lives, things that are not going to help us be good leaders, attitudes we've developed, philosophies, operating systems that we've moved into, that we're going to have to develop and grow through. So we need to realize that just as products aren't used until they are tested, so it is with us. God puts us through these things before really He lets us go through these challenges and these difficulties to face them so that we can learn through them, and then we're ready for the open market. We're ready to move forward. And so you might be in that kind of a position right now where you're like, man, I just feel like I'm in this huge test in my life right now. Well, let your goal be to pass that test. Realize divine promotion is on the other side of that test, whatever that difficulty might be. God's heart is for His children to pass the test and grow. God doesn't want you to fail, just like no parent wants their kids to fail. But every parent realizes that failure is a part of life and that they learn through the failure. One of my favorite quotes is, we never learn from our wins. We don't learn from them, but we sure learned a lot from our failures and our losses. And so that's true in just about every arena of life. I coached basketball for years, and we had lots of losses and we had lots of wins. When there's wins, everybody celebrates and thinks everything we did was right. When there are losses, we're evaluating, we're looking at what we need to do to grow, to become stronger, to become better. God wants us to grow. He wants us to pass the test. A test has no value if the lessons are not learned. And boy, that's a powerful, powerful truth. I saw this cartoon by Charles Schulz. It had Charlie Brown carefully building a castle in the beach. It was made out of sand, obviously. Standing back to admire his work, he was soon engulfed by a downpour which leveled the castle. Standing before the smooth place where his artwork had once stood, he said, "There must be a lesson here, but I don't know what it is." I hope that's not true of you and I, that we're facing these challenges in our life and we're not real sure what's going on, why this is happening, what we could learn from this, how we're supposed to grow through this. The fact is, apart from the storms in my life, I would have never taken time to think through the truths about who the Lord really is. Sure, I might have led a Bible study on the names of God or quoted the string of verses that I know from the Bible in a sermon, but I would have never brought the rock-firm reality of who He is into the heart of my experience, and that's really key. That is really key. And so this is such an extremely important lesson for us to learn about developing and growing in our faith and becoming stronger and becoming the leader that we need to be. How do I know He's my fortress until arrows are flying around me and I run with all my heart into His open gates? How do I know that? I can only know that through the difficulties. How do I know He's my hiding place until I hear the enemy crashing in the brush behind me and feel His breath on the back of my neck and cry out for a place of refuge? How do I know He's my portion until all I treasure and hold dear suddenly is threatened or taken away from me? How do I know He's my Father until I feel orphaned and abandoned and left alone in the storm? How do I, like Peter, learn that He is my deliverer until I step out of the boat and plant my foot on the sea? Well, that's all we're going to have time for today. So fun teaching this particular message because, truthfully, we can all relate to trials and difficulties and feeling like we're being tried in the fire. Hey, if you've enjoyed this video, be sure to give me your comments and give us a thumbs up. We're really glad to hear from you. And I look forward when we come back next week when we get back into Leadership to Go.